Hello, welcome to Bits in Biology. My name's Liz, and today I'm going to do a solo playthrough of the Fox experiment, followed by my review of the game. I'm not going to do a full rules teach, but I will point out the differences between the solo game and the multiplayer game. The Fox experiment is an open drafting game for 1 to 4 players that uses dice to simulate the results of 6 decades of research into the evolutionary path from wolves to dogs. In the Fox experiment, you are drafting a pair of fox parents each turn based on whether they have curly tails, floppy ears, white patches in their fur, and a vocal response to humans, traits all associated with friendliness towards humans. Each round, you are hoping to breed friendlier pups than your opponent by rolling dice to simulate the genetic contributions of the parents. After 5 generations of pups, you will earn points based on pleasing patrons, fulfilling research goals, and breeding the friendliest foxes. Let's go down to the table, where I'm pretty much set up for a solo game of the Fox experiment. Here we are, pretty much set up for a solo game of the Fox experiment. It is set up very similar to the multiplayer game. Couple of exceptions. We're going to use this solo AI deck, so I've shuffled that and set that up there. We also have this deck of solo study cards, so these are similar but different to the study cards that we use for the regular multiplayer game. We do start the game with one of these cards showing and 1 friendly token on that card, and I'll explain why in just a bit. The solo AI starts out as second player. We have off camera, you can't see it because I'm a little bit short on space, but I have their deck of pups over here, and also have off camera their fox meeples and their gear token. For myself, I have my player board. I get to go first. I start out with 1 friendly die. And I start out with 1 study. I was actually dealt 3 studies and I chose 1 to keep. We have 4 potential female parents up here and 4 potential male parents up here. I have already shuffled up these supply tokens and I dealt out 1 too many. So let's shuffle those up a bit. So we set up, you can see here we only go this far for a 1 to 3 player game. So I have these supply tokens here, and I have 1 supply token next to each of our patrons. So what I did to get the patrons is there are 6 double-sided cards. So I shuffled those up and then randomly put them into their spots, and we use the A side for the first 2 locations and the B side for the last 2 locations. Off camera, I have some tokens, some trait tokens, star tokens, and friendliness tokens. I also have all the dice off camera over here to sort of save on space. And then I have my deck of blank pups here. These are all the same except for, I'll just choose 1 in the middle. Half of them are female and half of them are male. And so this is what we will mark our traits on. I'm not going to do a full rules teach. I'm going to assume you already know the rules for the multiplayer game. But even if you don't, I think you'll be able to follow along pretty easily. It's a relatively straightforward game. Last thing I haven't mentioned, we have a deck of study cards right here. So those look like this, but they'll all be a little bit different, where they're looking for you to have foxes with specific traits, specific combinations of traits to fulfill those goals there. And then we have these science cards here. These will give us special abilities. We'll be able to draw those either from supply tokens up here, or if we reserve a patron over here, and we can do that from our board. So like I said, the AI is going to go second, so I get to go first. And so the way that it works each round is we will take turns. I will end up with 1 female parent and 1 male parent, as well as my gear token up here somewhere on the supply track that is going to determine turn order for the next round. We're going to play over 5 rounds. The AI at the end of the selection phase is going to have 2 female parents, 2 male parents, and they will have 1 of their fox tokens on the supply track, and then they will also have their gear token on the supply track. And it is the gear token that is going to determine turn order for both of us. So like I said, this is played over 5 rounds. Each round is made up of 4 phases. Phase 1 is selection, where we're choosing our parents and our supply track position, and then we'll go through breeding. And when we do this, I'll do breeding for the AI first, and then I will do breeding for myself. Once that happens, we will do research. I should say I will do research. Breeding and research happen sort of simultaneously for the AI. We'll see how that works. And then once that is finished, we have the administration phase, where we will clear out the previous generation of pups, put the pups that are newly bred up here to be parents for the next generation. We'll give out friendliness rewards, which are worth points at the end of the game. And for any spaces that are still left over after we put the newly bred pups up here, we'll fill from these decks that I have off screen. We will see what the turn order is for the next round based on the supply track, and then we will clear these tokens and refill this supply track. Right, so like I said, I get to go first this round. That very often doesn't last for very long. All right, so what I'm going to be looking at is first my study card to sort of help guide my choices, and I'm also going to be looking at the AI study card because their choices are going to be guided in a very mechanical fashion by the traits on their study card. So I know I'm looking for, so I guess I should say this, there's 4 particular sets of traits we're looking for, and that is curly tails, floppy ears, sort of barking and whining in response to humans, and spots. So I'll talk about each of these as we go through the game in relation to the study. I've been really excited to do this video. I actually probably spent a little too much time doing a bit of research to be able to talk about different things as we go through the game. I'll definitely be writing a blog post about it, probably sooner rather than later, because I actually have a lot of notes typed up for this one. Okay, I'm looking for purple traits. I know the AI is going to be looking, I should call them by their name. So the curly tail trait, and the AI is going to be looking for barking and floppy ears. So depending on what card they flip over from the AI deck, their first choices are going to be Svetlana and Kerr up here. I don't actually, actually this one's not too bad, but these ones all have purple. That's actually pretty cool. And then I would look at what their second choice is going to be. So we won't know what their second choice is going to be for the males, because that's going to depend on what card gets flipped over. So I think the first one I want to choose is, I'm going to choose Radko because he's the only one that has 2 purple dice, and there's a chance that the AI will get a card that has them select both of their male parents on their next turn. So we don't know what's coming up. So I'm going to put my parents over here. Now we're going to flip over one of these AI cards, and what this tells us is they're going to first pick a female parent, and then they'll come up and put one of their fox meeples on the supply track. The female parent is going to be guided by their study card. So there's a 1 next to barking, the barking trait. And so that's their first priority trait. That's what they're going to be looking for. So if we look up here at the female parents, there's actually only 1 parent who is going to give dice for that trait, sort of simulating the genes underlying that trait. And so the AI is going to pick Svetlana. And then they're going to place one of their fox meeples up here on the supply track, and that's going to be based on this card up here. The arrow is pointing from left to right. So we're going to start at the farthest left space. So this space on the supply track is where you put your token if you want to go first, but the AI first places a fox meeple. When they come up with this symbol again, then they'll place their gear token, and that is what will determine their turn order on the next round. So they can't take this spot again for their gear token. All right, my turn next. Let's see. You know, I'm equally split between Laska and Kukla. I already have Radko, who gives me 2 of these dice that give me the curly tail trait. And I really would love to go before the AI on the next turn, and I kind of like getting these 2 tokens. So what this tells me is that I will get 2 trait tokens, 1 for curly tails and 1 for spots, if I take that spot. So that's what I'm going to do. I get a token for curly tails and a token for spots. Yeah, just put those below my board here. These are going to help me fulfill these goals on my player board that will give me things, either the ability to breed additional foxes, the ability to have more studies over here that I can fulfill for endgame points, or the ability to roll more dice. I really like that one. Or down here, I can use these trait tokens to claim one of these patrons who will also give me endgame points. So I did that for my turn. For the AI turn, they're going to flip another card. And they're first going to pick a male parent and then a female parent. And so the way they pick parents, oh, I actually shouldn't have taken that from there. They actually just put a fox meeple on that to show that they've taken it, which is nice for space concerns. So for the male parent, they're looking for the barking trait. There's only one male parent who has that. So they're going to claim cur. And now they're going to look for a female parent. There are none that have that first priority trait. So now they're going to go for the second priority trait, which is the floppy ears, and we see that they will choose Kukla. All right, now it's my turn. I am going to choose Laska for my female parent, and then the AI gets their last turn, and they're going to pick a male parent and then a supply track location. So for the male parent, again, we're looking first for barking, but we don't see that. The next thing we'll look for is for floppy ears, but we also don't see that in the male parents. And so now we're going to look up at this arrow, which is going from right to left. And so they will pick the male parent all the way over to the right, and that is Aramis. If we had turned over, well, I can look and find one because we shuffle these each round. If they had turned over, say, this card instead, where they still would have, oh, I never did put their token on a supply track. This was the card they had. This was the arrow, so they put that there. Anyway, back to what I was saying. If they had turned over this card instead, and it's directing me to choose a female parent, but they already have two, what I would do instead is flip over another card until it's having me choose a male parent so that I get the correct pairing of card and arrow. And these get reshuffled at the start of every round. So before we look at what pups I am breeding, we're going to look at what pups the AI is breeding. So we flip over one of their cards. And what we're going to do is look at the two parents who are furthest to the left. So that is Kukla and Kur, both starting with a K. And we're going to look and see what traits they have. They have 2 dice for spots. So we're going to mark 2 spaces here for spots. 1 die for floppy ears. So we'll mark 1 space for that. And they have 1 die for barking, so we'll mark 1 space for that. Then we come over here to their study card and they have 1 friendliness token, and so we'll go to the first priority trait and we're going to mark 1 of those on their pup here. Now the way that it works is in the boxes we're going to X that out, and for the circles we're going to put dots. That actually has no bearing on the AI, but it will be important when I breed my pups for collecting tokens, and then it will be important when we put the pups up here in the kennel for determining what dice you can roll if you choose them as a parent. So then we add up their friendliness score just by how many boxes and circles are marked. So they have a friendliness score of 5, and then we're going to name the pup. So here's a fun fact. In the Fox Farm study that was started by Dmitry Belyaev and was at first managed and then taken over by Lyudmila Trut. I'm actually not sure how to pronounce that, after Belaev's death. And what they did is they would name all the pups consistent with the first letter of the name of the mother. So I'm going to try to do that as much as possible. I did have a game where I had an awful lot of K names. And so I then used male parents as well, but we'll see. So let's name this one Kara. K-A-R-A. Okay, so we're going to set that over there. Now, before we go on to the second pup that the AI breeds, we are going to look to see if Kara fulfills any goals on the study card. So it does have two spaces marked for barking, and it does have 1 space marked for floppy ears. So we're going to take one of these fox meeples and show that it fulfilled that first level of the study card. Now, whenever the AI fulfills the first level of a study, they then draw another study off of their study deck and put it there. Now, this pup cannot fulfill levels on this study that they just turned over. However, the next pup that they breed, we're going to check both of these study cards. So the AI can use 1 pup to fulfill 1 level on multiple studies, whereas I am limited to 1 pup can fulfill a level on 1 study when I look at my pups and my studies. So now we're going to flip over another pup for the AI. We get another female pup. Now we're going to look at these parents that are all the way over to the right. We have Svetlana and Aramis, and we can see that we have 2 dice here for barking and 1 for curly tail. And then we come over here. Now we're still looking at this top study card. And again, they have 1 friendliness token, so we will mark 1 space for barking. And now we're going to see if, first we're going to add up the friendliness score. They only get a 4. And then we will name this one, let's name this one Sasha. All right, now we're going to see if Sasha fulfills any of these study goals. We have 3 for barking, but none for floppy ears. So they don't fulfill the next level of this study. And we only have 1 trait marked for curly tail, so they don't fulfill this study. So out of luck there. So that was the AI. Now we're going to take a look at mine. Now I start with the ability to breed 1 pup per round, and I will have to unlock additional pups to be able to breed more. So I will breed 1 pup, and the way that it works for me is I'm going to look at my parents and roll dice according to what is shown here for each of my parents. So I get to roll 3 dice for the curly tail trait and 1 die for the spots trait. So that's what I have. 3 for the curly tail trait. And then I have my 1 friendliness die that I start out with. I can earn more of them by using trait tokens to unlock that on my player board. And so the way that it works is we're trying to make complete shapes. This actually isn't too bad here. Got a full 1 on this die for the curly tail trait. I got 1.5 on this die for the curly tail trait. And then this is 2 halves, which by itself does not make a whole, but can be paired with another half to make a whole. And then I can use this half to complete that half right there for a whole. So what I have is 1, 2, 3, 4. I can mark 4 spaces for the curly tail trait and 1 space for spots. So if I look over here on my research card, I can see that I've fulfilled that first level. Now for me to get more study cards, I'm going to have to unlock them from my player board over here. So our friendliness score is 5. And let's name this one Lyrial. All right, now we are going to clear out the kennel. So we give the AI back their fox meeples. And we're going to move these pups up to the kennel. So the first ones I'm going to move up are the AI's pup. The first pup they made, Kara, is going to go all the way over to the left. It's a female, so it goes up there. And then Sasha's going to go all the way over to the right. If she were male, she would be down on this row here, but still all the way over to the right. And then mine just goes up here on the left. And we fill in the gaps from the deck. Then we're going to see who had the friendliest pup. All right, so we can see that the AI had Kara and Sasha with friendliness of 5 and 4. I had Lyrial with friendliness of 5. So we are tied. Ties are friendly. So we're each going to take a fox meeple and put it in this first spot here. At the end of the game, we'll each get 2 points. If one of us had lost out, we would have gotten a friendliness token as consolation. So I'm going to put these dice back. Now I'm going to take my trait tokens. And so I get a trait token for each of these circles that is filled in. So I get 2 curly tail trait tokens. None for spots, unfortunately. So now I have the opportunity to unlock upgrades from my player board. And so I am definitely going to do that. It's going to take 2 tokens. I can unlock either the ability to breed another fox, unlock a new study, unlock another trait die, or unlock a patron over here. And I actually would love to be able to roll another die. So I have my 2 tokens. I'm going to put 1 on my board and then just put 1 back in the supply. So I've marked that. I get to take one of these friendliness dice. And so these are pretty much just wild dice. And I will be able to roll that from here on out. Unfortunately, I don't have another trait token, but maybe I'll pick one up when we do choosing turn order up here. Now we're going to check for turn order. I'm still first. The AI is second, so I will put these back. We keep our markers, and I'm gonna get rid of these trait tokens. Now the trait tokens for the patrons stay in place. Those will stay in place the whole game. So this first spot does not get one. We'll just do these next 3 spots. All right, so the AI, oh wait, last thing we have to do, almost forgot, we're gonna shuffle this AI deck. So this happens at the start of every round. All right, I get to go first. So again, I'm looking for a lot of these curly tail traits and also spots. And I really like Lyriel. That was the pup that I bred on the last round because she has 2 of these curly tail traits and 1 of the spots. However, I can tell you that that is not one of the pups that the AI is going to choose. So I actually feel a little safe there. If I come down here, Solncy is great because he has 2 of the spots traits. And so I think, well, that's not actually a choice that's going to be made by the AI. However, if you look at these fathers, he's going to choose, the AI is going to choose Dmitri first. I wish they had given the AI a name. I'll have to think of a name for the AI. So I'm actually going to first claim my next place in turn order. Oops. Now, I'm tempted to take this first space, but there's no reward that comes with that. You know, I'm going to risk actually not going first next round because taking this one here is going to give me a science card and a friendliness token. So let's do that one. I get a friendliness token. Now, this is a one-time use and works just like the friendly dice. And I also get a science card. So the science cards give you a one-time benefit. This one says, after rolling a pup, re-roll all dice showing only a half symbol. And what I love about these cards is they have a little bit of flavor text at the bottom that tells you something about the research. So this one says, friendly foxes' stress hormone levels are much lower than the levels found in control foxes. And so one of the things they found out from this research, so I guess I should go back to Belyaev's original question, the reason he started this research in the first place was something that Darwin had written when he published in 1868, so almost 10 years after he published On the Origin of Species, he published The Variation of Animals and Plants under Domestication. And so he had actually observed that domesticated animals all seem to have a relatively similar suite of traits compared to their wild relatives, things that didn't really exist in the wild, at least not in adult animals. So for instance, white patches on their fur, floppy ears or maybe smaller ears, shorter muzzles, smaller teeth, and notably more frequent reproduction. And then also curly tails. You can especially see this in pigs. Smaller brains and of course more docile behavior, which is what we think of when we think of domesticated animals. And so Darwin had made that observation, and Belyaev, who was population geneticist and evolutionary biologist, was curious how domestication came about. How was that selected for? And his hypothesis was that you could get domestication by simply selecting for tameness, because that made the most sense to him as to what might have happened. So for instance, if we think of dogs, which is our oldest domesticated species, they were domesticated at least 10,000 years ago, probably quite a bit longer ago than that. And they evolved from wolves. And it's not like people could immediately select specific physical traits from the wolves. It would have been probably some sort of tameness that facilitated humans and wolves having this mutually beneficial relationship with each other. And there's some hypotheses about how that happened that I won't get into here, but I will get into possibly in a blog post. Anyway, so his idea, he did research with foxes. And his idea was to select tame foxes and then breed those tame foxes. Well, not tame, more tame. Like if you look at 100 foxes, he would pick the 10% that had the least aggressive or the least fearful behavior towards humans and then choose those to breed the next generation. So that was his idea. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but back to where we were. So I just chose my space up here on the supply track, and we come over here to the AI, flip a card. And we see they're going to choose a female parent and then a male parent. So for the female parent, they're going to look for that barking trait. And we can see that this one has 2 dice for the barking trait. So they're going to pick Sasha. And then for the male parent, they're going to pick Dmitri. Let's see, what do I want to choose? I'm probably going to go for a male parent next and choose Oh, I didn't get rid of my other parents. Okay, now there's space for them. We're going to pick Solncy for the male parent. And then it's the AI's turn. They're going to pick a female parent. So now the only one that has that barking trait is Kara. And then they're going to pick a space on the supply track, and we're going from left to right, so they'll pick that first spot there. And then it's my turn, and I'm going to pick Lyudmila for my female parent. And we'll turn over another AI card, and they get to choose a male parent. Now, there's none with the barking trait, but we do have some with the secondary trait that they're looking for, and that is floppy ears. Now, we have a tie here between Ruslan and Yefim, and they don't care about the curly tail trait. And so we're going to look up here at the arrow. It goes from left to right, so they're going to pick Ruslan for their male parent, and then they're going to pick a spot on the supply track from left to right and pick that spot right there. Now I have an opportunity, if I had enough symbols, enough trait tokens down here, I would now have an ability to unlock upgrades on my player board, but I only have one of each of these, and I need a minimum of 2 to unlock something on my player board, so that's not going to happen. So now we'll go over here to the AIs breeding their pups. We get a male pup. They're going to look at these parents all the way to the left. We have Kara and Ruslan, and they have 3, we're going to mark 3 spaces for floppy ears, 1 space for barking, and 1 space for spots. And then we come over here, and they have the 1 friendliness token, so we're going to mark another space for barking. That gives them a friendliness score of 6. You'll see this number improve as we go through the 5 rounds of the game. And now we get to name that pup. So we have another K. You can just see me running out of ideas for K names. Let's name this one, how about Keely? Do that. We'll name him Keely. All right, now we're going to check the study cards, and we see that he does have 1 floppy ears trait, but he does not have 3 of the barking traits, so he does not work for this study. What about this study? He doesn't have any curly tails, so he does not fulfill that study. So now we come to the next pup. They always breed 2, the AI. We're going to use these right-hand parents, Sasha and Dmitri. We do mark 1 for curly tails, 1, 2, 3 for barking, and that's it. Okay, so they have a friendliness score of 4, and we'll name this one, let's see, it's a girl, about Sasha. And now we're going to check to see if Sasha fulfills any of the studies. Does not have the floppy ears trait, so we can't do that one. And here we only have marked 1 space for the curly tail trait, so we're not going to do that one. Now it is my turn. My parents are going to let me roll 2 of the curly tail dice, 2 of the spots dice. Nope, 3 of the spots dice. Okay, whoops. And let's get our pup. And now I have 2 of these wild friendliness dice, or friendly dice. Okay, oof, that's not great on the curly tail, so we have those 2. Oh, I might do something different here in a minute. We'll see. All right. I'm going to take this wild die and put it right in the middle of those, so that now I have 2 curly tail. Ah, man, I need 4. That's unfortunate. I need to get another study card so I don't run into this. But this will at least give me a curly tail trait token, so that's great. And then we will do that for the spots. Let's see. Let's do that. So we're going to mark 2 for curly tail. And now I could use this token to give me another spots, to be able to mark another spots on here, but that's not really going to benefit me right now, so I'm going to hold off. 1, 2, 3 for spots. Well, I take that back. It could potentially benefit me because it would let me mark over here, but I'm already going to get another token for spots, and I have 1, so we're doing okay. So let's do the tokens. Oh, wait, before we do the tokens, let's do the friendliness score. So we have a score of 5. So the AI is going to beat me there. And then let's name her. Let's see, her mom was Lyrial. How about if we name her Laryl? All right. Now I get my tokens, trait tokens. I get one for curly tails, one for spots. And that's going to be great for unlocking upgrades over here. Put my dice back. So now I have the opportunity to unlock upgrades before we go on to doing stuff up here with the pups. So I do have 2 of these curly tail traits. And actually I'm looking over here at these patrons. Now I'm not going to unlock a patron right now, but this patron over here is, if I do unlock that one, is going to give me points for having tokens that are the same next to each other in a column. This one is going to give me points for having sets of tokens, no matter where they are on my board. This one gives me points for unlocking the first level of a study. This one gives me points for curly trait tokens. That's pretty good. Curly tail trait tokens. So I'm going to use 2 of these to unlock another study. That over there. So what I do is I draw 3 studies and choose one to keep. Well, all of them have this trait that the AI is looking for, which is not spectacular. However, how about, let's go for this one. It has the curly tail trait and the barking trait and spots trait. It's not looking for a lot of those in each of those categories, so that's kind of nice. Here we were challenged to try and get 4 for curly tails, and we didn't do that. Okay, discard those other 2. Next, we are going to clear out the previous generation. So there, Soltsny. We're going to clear out these ones. And then for the AI's pups, Keely is going to go all the way over to here to the left for the males, and Sasha is going to go all the way over to the right for the females. Oops, make sure that's in camera. And then Laryl's going to come over here. We're going to fill up the kennel from the decks, and then we will assess who had the friendliest pup. So we can see that the AI, the friendliest pup out of the pups that were bred this round, is Keely with a friendliness score of 6. So the AI gets to put one of their fox meeples here. They'll get 2 points at the end of the game. As a consolation prize, I get a friendliness token. Now we're going to look up here at turn order, and now the AI is going to be first, so they get that token. These go back. All right, and we are ready to move on to the next round. So the AI gets to go first. Oops, I have not shuffled their deck. It doesn't explicitly say in the rulebook to shuffle this deck each round, but it is clarified. I'll have to find it again. It is clarified in a forum post on Board Game Geek, and it's the only thing that makes sense, really. Okay, so they flip a card, and they're going to look for a female parent and a male parent. So for the female parent, again, they're going to look for that barking trait. And we have Mechta. Oh, I have a story about Mechta. Irina and Sasha. Sasha has 2 barking traits. It gives 2 dice for barking traits, so they're going to take Sasha. Mechta is really interesting. She was the first of the domesticated foxes to have floppy ears, and that was in 1969, well after the study got underway. So the study started, it really started as the brainchild of Dmitry Belyaev in 1952, and he did a pilot study for a few years, and then it got started on a larger scale in 1958. And so when Mechta was born in 1969, that would have been the 10th generation. I think I'm doing my math right around there anyway, the 10th generation, when they first saw floppy ears in the foxes, which sounds like a long time to us humans, but actually in the big scheme of evolution is really a blink of an eye. Okay, so they have picked a female pup, a female parent, and now we're going to pick a male parent. And again, they're looking for that bark trait, and Tobik has 2 of those, so they're going to claim Tobik. And now it's my turn. Now I have choices, right? I still really want that curly tail trait because I get more points as I fulfill different levels of my study. but I want to branch out a little bit. So if I look at what's available, Keely is looking really great, although does not have the curly tail trait. Oh, well, they're going to take Keely for sure. Ooh, Laryl is the only one with the curly tail trait besides Sasha. I just noticed that. All right, that's not great. So we're also looking for barking and spots. You know what? I'm going to take Keely. So while Keely doesn't give me curly tail trait, it does give me barking and spots, as well as floppy ears, and it takes away floppy ears from the AI. So let's take Keely. Now it's the AI's turn, and they're going to claim a spot on the supply track, moving from left to right, so all the way to the left. And then they're going to pick a female parent, and it's a tie between Mechta and Irina, and so they're going to move from left to right and take our floppy-eared Mechta. All right, my turn. So I'm looking at the male parents that are left. Oh wait, I already have a male parent. Let's look at the female parents. I really want Laryl because it's the only one that gives me a curly tail. Just one die for curly tail, but that's all I need up here for this study, so we'll take Laryl. And I actually, do I want to take Laryl yet, or do I want to claim a spot up here? You know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to claim this spot right here so that I can go first next round. So I get 2 of those friendliness tokens. And now I'm up to 4 of those. And again, those are one-time use. Now it is the AI's turn. And they're going to pick first a male parent. And this is their backup trait, is this floppy ears. So they're going to pick Evgeny. Evgeny, I am probably saying that wrong. It's a Russian name. Okay, and this says female parent, but they already have 2 female parents. So we're going to flip another card, and now we can see supply track. So they are going to claim that spot right there. It's the first open spot going from left to right. Now it is my turn. I still need a female parent, so I'm going to pick Laryl. All right, so that's the selection phase. So after selecting, I have the opportunity to unlock upgrades, which is great because I forgot that I had 2 spots tokens. So I think what I want to do with the spots tokens is come up here and unlock the ability to breed another fox. All right, so the AI gets to go first. Turn over, they get a female pup, and again, we're going to look at these far left parents. And we get to mark 3 spaces for barking. So this represents the pups doing barking and whining whenever a caretaker would approach their cage. So really responding to humans, but not in an aggressive way. So this isn't aggressive barking. This is like the I'm happy to see you sort of barking. All right, and then we have 1. We can mark 1 for floppy ears. Now we have 1 friendliness token over here, so we're going to mark another one for barking. So they get a friendliness score of 5, and we will name this one, let's name this one Misha. All right, now we're going to see if Misha fulfilled any levels of either of these studies. So we do have 1 floppy ear trait, and we do have at least 3. We have in fact 4 for barking, so they get to move their fox meeple up 1 for that. Now we can't check the second level for that because they can only fulfill, so while they can fulfill a level on multiple studies, they are limited to fulfilling 1 level on each study. So then we come over here, they don't have curly tail. So they don't fulfill that. So now we go on to the second pup for the AI. And we get a male pup. And we're going to look over here at Sasha and Evgeny. Somebody please give me the phonetic pronunciation. Okay, so we get to mark 1 for curly tail, and 1 for floppy ears, and 2 for barking. And then we come over here and we can mark another one for barking because of that friendliness token. So they have a friendliness of 5. And we'll name this one, let's name this one Sam. Okay, and now we'll see if Sam fulfills any of these study levels. They only have 1 curly, I keep wanting to call that curly ears, that would be pretty funny, floppy ears, so they can't fulfill that. But if we come here, yep, they only have 1 for curly tail, so they don't fulfill that study. AI is off to a slow start on studies. Okay, so now it is my turn, and I get 1 die for curly tail, 2 dice for floppy ears, 1 die for barking, and 3 dice for spots. And I get to roll my 2 wild dice, my 2 friendliness dice. And we have a curly tail. I need that one, so I got 2 whole ones for spots. That's great. We only have 1 up here. So let's do, that gives me 2 of those now. Oh, now I'm going to use 2 of these friendly tokens. Oh no, I don't have to. I still haven't fulfilled the first level of this study. So we're looking for 1. Let me think about this. We're looking for 1 for curly tail. We've got that. We don't really need the floppy ears, but we've got it anyway. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, turn over one of my pups. So we have 1 for curly tail, 1 for floppy ears, 2 for bark is what we get out of that, and 2 for spots. Okay, so that's my first pup. I'm going to put Misha up here already. In fact, it's just going to be easier as we get into breeding more pups for me to clear these out early. Okay, Sam, you go all the way over to the right. Okay, let's name our pup. The mom was Laryl, so let's name this little girl Luna. And she has a friendliness score of 6. Oh, that's great. We're gonna win the friendliness competition. Okay, now I'm gonna set Luna off to the side so we don't have to check our studies until we are done with breeding foxes. I did unlock the ability to breed another fox, so that is what I'm gonna do. I re-roll my dice. And ooh, that's terrible for my curly tail. Well, I'm not gonna unlock, so this Luna, I'm gonna mark this already. Luna is gonna unlock this study here, or fulfill that study. So I am looking for 2 curly tails here and 2 barking. There's no way that's gonna happen. I don't really want to totally use up these trait tokens yet. Let's see if we do that. So I should, before I decide how I'm going to fill this in, I want to point out that when I'm collecting trait tokens, I don't collect a trait token for every circle that's filled in on all of my foxes. For each trait, I look at all the foxes that I bred and I choose the one that gives me the most trait tokens. So right now I know that I'm getting 1 for barking and 1 for spots, which is actually the same as that gives me, but I'm not yet getting any for curly tail or floppy ears, but then there's no way for me to get 2, I don't think. Well, I have to allocate. Oh, wait a second. You know what? I forgot about that. Let's do this. We have 2 for curly tail. That'll give me 1 of those. I can, oh, you know what? I'm gonna use up these friendliness tokens. I'm probably gonna regret this. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We have 2 for curly tail and only 1 because these 2 halves don't make a whole, so just 1 for floppy ears. I have 2 for barking and 2 for spots. And that's gonna let this fox, after I name it, fulfill that level of that study. So it has a friendliness score, ooh, biggest one so far, of 7. Very friendly pup over here. So this pup is going to be named, let's name this one Legolas. All right, and Legolas fulfills this next level of that study. So we move our fox meeple over, and now let's get these dice out of the way. These, like I said, are one-time use, so they go away. I should look and see what trait tokens I get. So I get 1 for curly tail, 1 for barking, because that's the most that either of those give me, and then 1 for spots. So that's not going to let me unlock any upgrades, unfortunately, but it gets me on my way. So then we'll put Luna up here, Legolas over here. Let's do our friendliness competition. So I won that. However, because I won the friendliness competition, the AI is going to get 2 friendly tokens, which is not great for us, but be good for having some very friendly foxes. So we're going to put 1 of the friendly tokens on this first study, but you can have maximum of 2 per study. So we'll put this next friendliness token on the next study, and that's going to let the AI fill in additional traits on its pups. Okay, so now let's fill in the kennel. Oh, forgot to clear out my parents. And now we do turn order. So now I get to go first and refresh these supply track tokens. All right, so I get to go first. So let's see, I'm needing both spots. I'm needing spots, barking, and curly tails. And I know that the AI is going to be looking for barking and floppy ears. So for male parents, the AI wants Legolas and Sam, and it'll take Sam first. And then for the female parents, the AI really wants to get Misha and let's see, well, it's a toss-up between Luna and Vera. Well, Luna gives me a little bit of everything. I kind of want to take, oh, here's the thing. So we don't have to play with this variant, but I think I'm going to, because for the AI, they try not to take siblings, right? So they wouldn't want to take Misha and Sam because that's inbreeding. So there's an optional rule in the rule book on page 20, a penalty for breeding siblings. They say this rule can be easy for new players to forget, so we recommend only using it with experienced players. It says breeding foxes that are too closely related can cause genetic problems for their offspring, and this is because it will expose these recessive traits that are very often deleterious, often diseases or some sort of deformity or something like that. And so we really don't want to breed the siblings. We would rather outbreed them. And it says if players agree before playing to represent this in the game, then any time a player breeds 2 parents that have the same player color, that is, that they came from the same player's parents in the previous round, they're going to receive a penalty. So after they collect trait tokens in the research phase, they have to immediately discard 2 tokens of their choice that they gained. Now, I will say that AI does try to avoid breeding siblings, but it will if it doesn't have a choice. And so it does not get a penalty for that. So we are also going to try not to breed siblings. I really want to get Legolas. So I think I'm going to go for, actually, I'm not going to go for a parent first. Maybe I'm going to come up here first. No, let's take Luna. Let's do that. She'll give us 1 of each die. Okay, now, oh, I always forget this part. Shuffle up the AI deck. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 6 cards in the AI deck. Okay, so first they're going to go for the supply track. I'll put a meeple all the way over to the left, and then they're going to go for a male parent. They're looking for barking, and so they're going to go for Sam first. So I don't want to pick Legolas because they're siblings. He's a brother to Luna, and so I guess I'm going to pick Yuri. All right, now it's the AI's turn, and they're going to pick a male parent and a female parent. So for the male parent, they're going to pick Legolas, and for the female parent, they're going to pick Misha, because Misha has 2, well, has 4 really of the barking trait, but it would give 2 barking dice. And now it's my turn. I kind of like going first, but I really like the fact that this one gives me 2 trait tokens. However, I don't already have floppy ears, so let's go for that, for barking, to get that first place spot. All right, and so I get a barking token for that. And now it's the AI's turn, and they're going to pick their other female parent, and so they're going to go for Vera, and they're going to go from right to left, so they'll go here. So I didn't really have to worry too much about turn order. Okay, so now I have the opportunity to unlock upgrades if I want, and so I'm going to take these 2 barking trait tokens, and I'm going to unlock another die. So now I'm up to 3 of these friendly dice. They're really helpful. It was a toss-up between that and another study, to be honest. Okay, now it is the AI's turn, and they're going to use these far left parents, Misha and Legolas, and we have 1 curly tail, 2 for floppy ears, 3 for barking, and 1 for spots. So that's 7 on the friendliness scale. We're going to name this one. Let's name this one Mistra. All right, let's see if she fulfills any. Oh, wait, we're not done. They're going to have a bigger trait. Forgot about this. So we get to add a bunch of stuff. So one for barking. We're going to add one for floppy ears. And we're going to add another one for barking. Because oh no, not for barking, sorry. The one is next to curly tail. So we're going to add one for curly tail. It's whatever the number 1 is, you go there first and then the number 2. So actually, Mechta is quite friendly. 4, 7, 10 on the friendliness scale. I don't think I can beat that. Let's see if Mechta fulfills either of these studies. So 2 for floppy ears, yep, and 3. So they just completed a study. So we are going to take those. Do they still keep these tokens? They don't go anywhere. We're going to take this study and just turn it over here. It's off screen, but it's over here. I'm keeping those. And then we're going to move this one up. Now we're going to check this study. We have 2 curly tails, yep, and 1 for barking, yes. And so now that they have fulfilled the first level, they're going to turn over another study. And then also we have to distribute these friendliness tokens. So they can put another one on here because they can have a maximum of 2. And then we'll put 1 on here. So they fulfilled the first level of that one, and then here they can't do that one because they just caused that one to be turned over. So Mechta doesn't get a chance to fulfill that study. All right, second pup for the AI. And now we're going to look at Vera and Sam. 1 for curly tail, 1 for floppy ears, 3 for barking, and 2 for spots. And then we're going to come over here and we get 1 for curly tail and 1 for barking. And then we come down here and we get another one for barking. Wow, they almost, so if they exceed one of these rows, then they would add the excess as a number over here to the right and gain that many star tokens, and each star token is worth 1 at the end of the game. But they didn't quite get there. Oh, we gotta name this pup. Wow, another 10 on the friendliness scale. So what should we name this one? Let's name this one Max. Okay, and now Max does not have 3 curly tails, so can't fulfill that study. So we come down here, 2 for barking, check, and 1 for spots. So now that they have fulfilled the first level on that study, they're going to turn over another one. Now again, Max can't fulfill on the new study, so we're done with Max and Mechta. And then I'm just going to put them in the kennel. So let's get rid of the previous generation to make some room here. So Mechta was the first pup. She goes all the way over to the left, and Max was the second pup. So he's going to go to the right. Now it's my turn. I get 2 floppy ears, 1 curly tail, 1 barking, and 3 spots, along with my now 3 wild friendly dice. Let's see. So I'm looking for either 2 or 4 for curly tails. If I have 2 for curly tails, then I want 3 for barking and 4 for spots. I don't think this is going to happen. Let's see. Oops, we can put that there. That gets us up to 3 for spots. There's no way. We're not going to be able to get to 3 for curly tails. So let's leave that at 2, because that'll give me another spots token. You know, I really need spots dice, and as it stands right now, the AI is now going to be looking at curly tails first and then barking. I'm going to do this a little different. Let's see, not there. Let's do this. Let's do that. All right, but we do get to breed 2 pups. Okay, we get a boy who's going to have 1 on the curly tail scale. 1, 2, 3 for floppy ears, 1 for barking, and 1, 2, 3 for spots, for a total friendliness of 8. And we will name this one about Lily. Okay, now we get to breed another pup. So, oh, whoops. That is not female. Let's name this one Loki. Okay, now we get to roll our dice again. Oof. Horrible. We really need more curly tail traits. I need to work on that. Yeah, there's no way we're going to fulfill either one of those studies. Ah, it's a bummer. So now let's look at what trait tokens. So far we're going to get 1 floppy ears and 1 spots for Loki. We really want another curly tail. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would give me 2 spots tokens, which is great. Yeah, let's do this. We're going to use up one of these friendly. It's my last friendly token. That's my one-time use one, but we'll see why in just a moment. Okay, so she has 2 for curly tail, 2 for floppy ears, just 1 for barking, pretty quiet pup, and 1, 2, 3, 4 for spots. For 4, 7, oh, we're 1 short, 9, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, no way to increase that. That's too bad. Okay, what should we name her? Lily, because that's what we were going to name Loki, so we'll name her Lily. All right, neither one of them fulfills a study for me, so I need to get another study. Okay, keep my dice, but this goes away. So now I collect trait tokens. We get 1 for curly tail, 1 for floppy ears, and we have 2 for spots because we get the most off of here. So we'll put Lily up here and Loki over here. Now I can unlock upgrades. So I really want another study. I wanted another die too, but I'm looking at this patron that I might unlock. So what are my best bets for patrons? You know, I think it's not worth it to try so hard for that patron. So I'm going to use my 2 curly tail tokens to unlock another study. So I draw 3 of these. Okay, curly tail has been a problem for me. I haven't necessarily been getting a lot of these floppy ears either. So let's do this study. And then I'm going to use these 3 spots tokens. So I want to either unlock another pup or another die. I think I'm going to unlock another pup. So I put 1 there and then 2 go in the general supply. Okay, so that is done with unlocking upgrades. We clear out the previous generation. We already have the new pups in the kennel. Now we do our friendliness rewards, and that goes to the AI. So there, but I at least get 2 of the friendly tokens, so that's not terrible, but that's worth 3 points at the end of the game. Okay, and now we take back, turn order, so I still go first. Refresh these. And now it is my turn. Oh, we should probably shuffle the AI deck. Oh, we gotta refill these. That's what I forgot. I knew something was missing. Boladenka and Akulia. Not Jacqueline. It's a good thing I actually didn't internalize what dice that was showing. My Vasily and Zabavny. All right, so I get to go first. I'm really looking for curly tails. So none of them give 2. Oh, Vasily gives 2 curly tail dice. And the AI is going to take him right away. So but Mechta looks so good. It's terrible decisions. I really like Loki and Mechta. Loki's better. However, they're going to go for Vasily first. So I'm going to go for Mechta because they would also possibly go for Mechta first. So let's snag Mechta. Now it's the AI's turn. They're going to go on the supply track all the way to the left. And they're going to pick a male parent. Their number 1 priority now is curly tails, so they're going to pick Vasily. Now it's my turn. I'm going to pick Loki. All right, and AI, they're going to pick a male parent. And again, they're looking for curly tails, so Max is their first choice. And then they're going to go on the far right on the supply track, so that's great. I was a little worried there. And now it's my turn. I am going to choose this position on the supply track, which gets me a curly tail token. Actually, do I want to go on the other spot? I don't think it matters. Yeah, I'll just go for the curly tail token. Okay, and then it's the AI's turn. And they're going to go for their female parent. And again, they're looking for curly tails now. So it's a tie between Lily and Akulia. So then they look at their secondary trait. Do they look at their secondary trait? Oh, now I can't remember. Choose fox parents based on study card. Trait priority on first study. If tied, tie goes to arrow on AI card. Okay, so they don't look at their second priority. They should. I feel like they should. But they probably play tested that and decided that didn't work as well. So they're going to start left. We're looking at a female parent. So they are actually, they're going to go for Lily anyway. That's their better choice. But what I was worried about is if that was starting over to the right, they would pick Akulia, and that's not really the best one for them, although better for me. Then it says pick a male parent, but they already have 2 male parents. So we're going to flip this. They already have 2 male parents, but they don't have 2 female parents, so they're going to go for Akulia for that one. I think that is everything. So they've picked their parents, I've picked my parents, so now I would have the opportunity to unlock upgrades, but I just have 2 mismatched tokens, so that's not going to happen. So now we'll breed pups for the AI. They look at these leftmost parents, Lily and Vasily, and they get 3 for curly tails, 1 for floppy ears, 2 for barking, and 2 for spots. And then we're going to come over here and we see that they get another one for curly tails and another one for barking. And then we come down here and they get another one for barking. So 4, 7, 11 on the friendliness scale. All right, now we'll name this one. Let's see, the mom was Lily, so let's name this one Lupin. Now we'll take a look at these studies. We do have 3 curly tails and we do have a bark, so they're going to move that one over. Then we come down here, they do have 3 barking and a spot, so we move that over. Then we come over here, they do not have 2 for floppy ears, thank goodness. So set that aside. Now they breed their second pup, another boy. And we have our parents on the right, Akulia and Max, and we have 2 for curly tails, 1 for floppy ears, 2 for barking, and 1 for spots. And come over here and we get another one for curly tails and another one for barking. And down here we get another one for barking, for a friendliness score of 9. And let's name this one about Aragorn. All right, look at the studies. So starting up here, they do have 3 for curly tail and 2 for barking. So they have fulfilled this study. This moves up. Redistribute these friendliness tokens. And now we look here and they want 3 for barking, which they do have, but 2 for spots, which they don't have. Then we come down here and they want 2 for curly or for floppy ears. They don't have that, so that's not going to happen. Let's make some room in the kennel. Lupin goes all the way to the left and Aragorn goes to the right. My turn. I get 2 curly tail dice, 4 floppy ear dice, nice, 3 for barking, and 3 for spots. Wow, I'm rolling a total of 15 dice. That's really fun. Okay, now we're looking good on the, looking better anyway, on the curly tails. Let's see. We are looking for, is there any way for us to get 5 on the curly tails? 1, 2, yeah, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that would also get us 2 on spots, so we don't have to worry about that. So this is going to serve us best. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, I think here. Let's do that. Okay, what do we have? We have a girl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for curly tails. Fantastic. 1, 2, 3, 4 for floppy ears. 1, 2 for barking, and 2 for spots. Okay, and that gives us a grand total of, we might win the friendliness contest, 8, 10, 12, 13. This is a friendly pup. Let's see, the mom was Mistra. Let's call this one, how about Minerva? Okay, we have the ability now to breed 3 pups. So she's going to have a brother. This goes away. Dropped one. Okay, let's try that again. It's not looking so good on the curly tails. I'm glad the last one did. Looking great for floppy ears. I don't think I need floppy ears. Oh, maybe up there. Okay, let's see. So, well, I already know Minerva is not going to fulfill either of these studies and does fulfill. Oh, I didn't need 5. I needed. Okay, so we'll hold off because we might get one that has 4. So we'll wait. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I do need 2. Okay, let's do 2. And we need 3. We've got 3, 4. Oh, we can do this. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we want to go 5? Because that would get me 3 friendliness tokens, which would let me unlock something else. So let's do that. Okay. This boy gets 2 for curly tails. And 1, 2, 3 for floppy ears. 3 for barking. And he is spotty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for spots. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 for friendliness, just like his sister Minerva. And we're going to call him, let's call him Mary, after Frodo's friend. Okay, good. Now this goes away. We don't have any more friendliness tokens, but we get to roll all our dice for one last pup. Oh, we're in the last round. Come on. What do we got? 1, 2. Now I do have this science card that says re-roll all dice showing only a half symbol. So that doesn't count for double halves like that, but it would count for all these halves, which I do have a fair number, but let's see how we come about and see if we want to use that. Okay, I think this is what I want to do. So I'm not going to use my science card. Any science cards you don't use are worth a point at the end of the game. So let's see, they have a sister who has 1, 2, 3, 4 for curly tail. That's going to let her fulfill this study, and then Minerva can fill the last part of that study. We have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 for floppy ears, and 1, 2 for barking, 1, 2 for spots. 8, 12, slightly less friendly than her siblings. Let's call this one Marina. All right, now we're going to see what studies they fulfilled. Get these dice out of the way. All right, so Marina is going to help me get to the second level of that study, and so that takes care of her. And then Minerva is going to fulfill the last one. So I fulfilled all 3 levels of that study. Then let's see what Mary can do. Oh, look at that. Mary can get me to the last one of that study. So I didn't do anything on that study. So that was unlocking that. Didn't really get me anything. Didn't get me points or anything. That's unfortunate. Okay, so these, I'll just stack those up down here. This one I'm just going to discard because I didn't do anything with it. We will put our pups up here. We're not going to refill up here, but we would do that to figure out friendliness. But before we do that, let me figure out my tokens. So for curly tail, the best one is 3 for curly tail. And for floppy ears, it looks like 2. For barking, the best I do is, oh wait, that's not me. Barking is 1, just 1 barking token. And for spots, I get 3 spots. Okay, so now I can unlock levels or unlock things on my player mat. Now I really want to take a look at these patrons now. Oh, I wish I had another one of these. Oh, but I could get one if or I could get one here. So I only unlocked 2 studies, first levels, so that's not great. The most I'm going to have is 1 set for her. Here could look good. I could make that look decent anyway, not great. What about this one? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so I am going to use 2 of these curly tail. Nope, that's not what, oh no, in order to get that I have to do that, and then I don't have the barking in a row. That's what I was trying to do, is get another barking one for here. But it will get me a barking token, which I can't really use. So actually, this gets me 4 points. That also gets me 4 points. This one actually gets me 2 science cards, which are worth a point each, and it gets me a curly tail token. So that actually is going to be good. Let's do that. I'm going to unlock this patron here. I'm going to put my curly tail there, put my other one here, and put one of my fox meeples here. And that's going to let me get a curly tail token and 2 science cards, where it says this is after rolling or before rolling. So these are only going to be worth points. But let's take a look at the flavor text. Neural crest cells in embryos contribute to stress hormones, fur pigment, and cartilage. So all of these traits tend to change together. So we'll talk about that in a minute. This one says the first foxes selected were ones who did not bite or snarl at the researchers who offered them food. Yeah, so early on, the foxes were not very tame, so they would approach the cages and hold out. The gloves they wore were 2 inches thick, apparently, because foxes have very sharp teeth. So they would approach the cage, and if the foxes weren't overly aggressive, I think they opened the cage, I can't remember, and put their hand in maybe to offer food or something. Anyway, they would pick the foxes that had the least aggressive or the least afraid reactions for the breeding the next generation. So that's what's represented by this friendliness scale up here. Okay, so we unlocked a patron, and now I'm going to unlock another patron. So which one gets me the most points? 4 points, 4 points. In a minute. That one I've already unlocked. This one gets me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So let's unlock that one. Okay, and we'll do it with a curly tail. So we have 3 curly tails, put them there, discard 2 of those, and unlock that patron. That's going to get me a barking token and a floppy ears token. Barking token doesn't really do me any good because I only have 1. So then I'm going to put these 3 spots tokens here, and I'm not going to draw the studies, but I am interested in these points. It's going to get me 3 points at the end of the game, and it's going to give me some points for that patron there. So discard those, and then I'm going to use 3 of these floppy ear tokens to, now again, I don't need the die, but it will get me 3 points at the end of the game. So I'm left over with these 3 tokens at the end of the game. So you get 1 point for every 2 that are left over at the end of the game, as we will see. Okay, so that was that. Clear the previous generation. And now we'll give friendliness rewards. And I think I won that hands down because Mary and Minerva were 13 on the friendliness scale. So woohoo. And in the last round, there's no consolation prize because it's unimportant. So now we do final points. So this game comes with a handy dry erase score sheet. I love this. So me and what should we call the AI? I'm going to call the AI, oh, I know, Nina. Nina was the first person that Belyaev sort of recruited in. She was the one that did the pilot study for him, really. So I'll talk about all that in a minute before I go on to my review. Okay, so the first one is studies. So I completed 2 of them. They're 10 points each, so that's 20 points. The AI completed 2, so that's 20, and then it got 5 points on this one, so they got 25 for their studies. And then patrons, the AI doesn't get anything. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for this patron, and this patron, I have 2 that are next to each other here vertically and 2 here, so that's 4 points. So that's 9 points total. And then we're going to look at points earned from the player board. So again, the AI doesn't have that, but I have 8 points from my player board. And now we're going to look at points from the friendliness awards. The AI has 7, and I have 10. Hey, I think I did pretty good. Science cards and stars. I have 3 science cards, so that's 3 points. The AI doesn't have any stars. They could potentially get stars, but they don't happen to have any. And then I get 1 point for every 2 tokens, so that's 1 point there, and then none for the AI. So let's see. I have 51. Wow, we smoked him. So the AI scores. So I have played this solo now, actually a handful of times, but I did some things wrong the first few games, and I'll talk about that in my review. So I don't know what an average score is for the AI, but that seems a little low. I did have one game where they completed, I think they got 40-something points because they completed 3 studies and then got up to the 2nd level on 2 of them. So this was, the AI completing 4 studies was not a lot. Okay, so that was the AI. So 51 to 32, not bad. Not bad. I'm pretty pleased about how much of my board I filled up. That's a pretty good amount to fill up, and we did pretty good. So I am fascinated by this research. I've been really looking forward to playing this game. I don't know why it took me so long to get it off the shelf, but here's the thing. I am really interested about the historical backdrop of science. So Dmitry Belyaev, who was the lead researcher on this experiment, he's the one that dreamed it up and got it started. He was trained as a population geneticist, as was his oldest brother. So his oldest brother was 18 years older than him. Dmitry was born in July of 1917, and he's Russian. And so those of you who know your history would know that that was right in the midst of World War I. And not only that, but smack dab in between of 2 Russian revolutions. There was 2 Russian revolutions in 1917. The first of those overthrew the monarchy, got them to step down. And then the second revolution that year, so there was a big power vacuum, of course, after the monarchy stepped down, and a whole bunch of groups were vying for power. And so the second revolution actually put the Bolsheviks in power, and they were led by Vladimir Lenin. And this ended up turning into a civil war, because as you can imagine, the groups that lost that revolution were not exactly happy about it. And so there was a Russian Civil War that lasted about 6 years, 5 or 6 years, 1917 to 1923. And so this was basically the Bolshevik Red Army that was against everybody else. And the Bolsheviks emerged victorious and established eventually, shortly thereafter, the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republic. And the Bolsheviks then reformed that into the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So we'd be more familiar with that. So that civil war went through 1923. So if you think about Dmitry Belyaev, he would have been, 5 or 6 years old when that ended. So Lenin, who was the first leader of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union, he died in 1924, and he was succeeded by Joseph Stalin. Stalin very soon consolidated his power, surrounded himself with, people who supported him, and became a dictator by the 1930s. Didn't take him long. Let's back up a little bit. So while all this was going on, this was a pretty violent time in Russian history. And so in 1927, after Dmitry's family had actually suffered quite a lot at the hands of Stalin because Dmitry's dad was a priest and the communist state was atheist, like I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, declared atheist. Anyway, priests and landowners and basically anybody who wasn't just basic workers was persecuted in this time. And so fearing for Dmitry's safety, his family sent him to Moscow to live with his older brother Nikolai, who lived in Moscow with his wife, where he was a population geneticist. At about this time, so at about 1927, so this would have been when Dmitry was about 10 years old, a guy named Trofim Lysenko, and I'm probably saying these names all a little bit wrong, but he was researching crop improvements. Now this guy grew up out of working parents, poor working parents. But anyway, he was researching crop improvements at the time because there was a huge famine going on. And he was recognized by Stalin for his efforts. This actually stemmed out of an article that was pretty much complete fiction. But Stalin picked it up and elevated Lysenko to basically ever-increasing positions of power because Lysenko claimed that his methods could create huge improvements in a short amount of time and involve farmers in an agricultural revolution. And so this really appealed to everything that Stalin was interested in about elevating workers and feeding his people. Lysenko would step up through the ranks of power, and it was going to take several decades for those in power to eventually realize what scientists realized relatively quickly, not super quickly, not quickly enough to put an end to it, that Lysenko was actually exaggerating and lying about his results. Now, how he kept this up for so long is only a little bit of a mystery. Part of how he did that was by targeting other scientists, especially geneticists and evolutionary biologists. And so starting in 1929, many scientists were actually targeted because their research was considered incompatible with Soviet doctrine. And that was, in no small part to Lysenko. And so many of those scientists disappeared, died mysteriously, or were simply sent to concentration camps up in Siberia. So this was not a great time to be, especially a geneticist and evolutionary biologist, but other scientists also, especially those who were considered elite. Basically, if you weren't just a worker, the proletariats, the government didn't like you. So really, really persecuted. Those groups were really persecuted. And so Dmitry Belyaev, amidst all this, wanted to go to Moscow State University, but because he was the son of a priest, he wasn't allowed to. So he went to the only other place that he could go where he could also study biology, and that was Ivanova State Agricultural Academy. And so he studied biology there. Now, it was not a terrible place for him, even though it was basically a technical institute, right? He was, studying crops and all that, not necessarily studying genetics, but researchers would come through and give talks. So there was enough of them apparently at that time that he had learned quite a bit of genetics from his brother Nikolai, and by going and attending talks with his brother, and then he learned more at Ivanova State Agricultural Academy. And then I just want to read you this quote because I found this resource online that was amazing. It was written by, what was her name? Berg was her last name, Raisa Berg, I think. Published in 1983, and I will put a link to it down in the description. But she was there. She was a scientist, a geneticist during this time. Anyway, this came from this document. She said, this is to quote because she was basically an eyewitness to all of this. In 1936, several events occurred which were to culminate in a catastrophe for genetics in the Soviet Union. The process of subordination of science to political authority entered into its bloody phase. Group liquidations were always in vogue in the USSR. Beginning in 1936, geneticists became one of the target groups. At the Institute of Plant Breeding, at the Commissariat of Agriculture, and at the Agricultural Academy, arrests became commonplace. People were accused of being saboteurs and wreckers, so basically wreckers of the cultural and social fabric. Anyway, back to the quote. At the Leningrad University, I Present finally succeeded in his denunciations. Those who had represented Russian science on the international scene were the most endangered. In the 20s and early 30s, some young scientists had been granted fellowships abroad. Most of them returned only to be arrested and executed. So she lists several of them, but the only one that I recognized from that list was Dobzhansky. So this was Theodosius Dobzhansky, and he was the second one on the list. And so going back to the quote, so they had all been abroad. Of these, the first two did not return. So Theodosius Dobzhansky stayed in, I think it was the United States, which is a good thing because he was amazing in terms of evolutionary biology. He was the one who did the famous quote that nothing in biology makes sense except in light of evolution. That is my favorite biology quote. Anyway, back to the quote. We're almost done. The last two survived and the rest perished, and so were killed. And then she lists some more of them, and in that group is Nikolai Belyaev, Dmitri's brother. They were arrested and never freed. And she said there were thousands of less well-known innocent victims. So this was in 1936. And so it was actually in 1937, a year before Belyaev graduated from the Ivanova Agricultural Academy, that his brother Nikolai was arrested by the state police, and his family found out that he was executed without trial. So he was a population geneticist, and his family actually tried to find his wife. It took them years and years. She had been sent to prison, and they never found their child. So despite all these dangers, so remember, Belyaev is interested in genetics, and he was about to graduate from Ivanova. And despite these dangers, he continued with his research. So he was going to start a graduate degree. He strategically picked a subject for his dissertation that was the improvement of silver fox fur, because fox fur was bringing in a lot of money for the government. So this is, good for him to be well known for this. And this ended up saving him probably. So foxes from Russia's Arctic north were bred in captivity for their thick fur, most of which was dark, but sometimes they'd get some variations on that for making winter coats. And so these would be sent to other countries, of course, and bring in a lot of money for the government. So Belyaev framed his research as studying animal physiology and breeding and trying to make better furs and that sort of thing. However, he was quietly using Mendelian ideas and methods and supported, at least on an emotional or friendship level, other scientists doing the same. His studies, unfortunately, or possibly fortunately for him, were interrupted by World War II. Remember, that started in 1939 and would continue on for another 6 years. So Russia at that time was fighting against Germany along with the rest of Europe after Germany invaded Poland. Dmitry actually became an officer, and so again, this was another mark in his favor for sort of keeping him out of Lysenko's sights in any case. And so he ended up, shortly after World War II was over, he earned his doctorate in 1946. Shortly after that, he became the lead scientist at the government-run Central Research Laboratory on fur-breeding animals in Moscow. He became very well known for his research into breeding foxes, not only foxes actually, but also mink. And there was all these farms that were run by the government at the time. Now, going back to that one document by Raisa, I'm not sure how to say her first name, Berg, she said that in 1948, teaching and research in genetics completely ceased. It stopped. Completely stopped. So that was 1948. So here we have Dmitry Belyaev wanting to do genetics research, but, fearing for his life if he did. So Reiseberg goes on to say, and this is a quote, "Genetics was eliminated from all textbooks. Teaching at schools and universities had to be entirely Lysenkoist." Remember that guy? This political tempest swept away hundreds of scientists. The higher the scientific repute of the person, the more cruel was the persecution. So basically, Lysenko was threatened by these people. Stalin died in 1953 and was replaced by Khrushchev. Khrushchev was only marginally better than Stalin, but he still supported Lysenko's research, and basically by all reports at the same level that Stalin did. So if you think about how long this has been going on with Lysenko, he basically got into power around 1927, 28, and now here we are all the way up into 1953. And he managed, by getting rid of all of his rivals, basically, I'm really not sure how he managed to keep the government going, that because his research never yielded results. His research was based on this idea of inherited characteristics, that you could do something to wheat and its offspring would inherit the character that had been given to them. It had to do with exposing seeds to cold and moisture or something before they were planted in the spring. He was trying to improve crop yields. I need to look more into this history. I'm not sure how he pulled the wool over everybody's eyes for so long, but some scientists were starting to catch on, but unfortunately not Khrushchev. And so Dmitry Belyaev not only was interested in genetics, but he became really interested in the evolution of domesticated animals. And in particular, he wanted to know if this could happen by simply selecting for behavioral traits that were friendly to humans. If you could domesticate animals this way. And then remember, I already told you about what Darwin had noticed, and that was that compared to their wild kin, that domesticated animals tend to have this suite of characteristics, like white patches on their fur, floppy ears, shorter muzzles, smaller teeth, more frequent reproduction, and that's going to be important to our story, curly tails, smaller brains, and docile behavior. And so the term for this was, in the 1980s anyway, what somebody came up with was called domestication syndrome. And that's what we use to refer to that suite of traits. So Belyaev started planning his research in 1952, but very quietly and very carefully. So this was a year before Stalin died. So we're backing up just a little bit, but not by much. So he approached a breeder that he had worked with, Nina Sorokina, who was managing a fur farm up in Kohila, what is present-day Estonia. So this is far far away from Moscow, far away from Lysenko and his goons. And he didn't tell her everything because he didn't want to put her at risk. He told her basically that his goal was to try to domesticate the foxes so that they would be able to breed twice a year like other domesticated animals. I mean, he told her a little bit, and he did tell her she had to be careful and that it was risky because it does look like genetics research a little bit if you look too closely, but she was all in. She had worked with Dmitry before and really liked him, considered him a real smart guy. And so they chose foxes to breed that showed the least amount of fear and aggression towards humans, and within 3 breeding seasons, they started to see that some of the pups were a little bit calmer when approached by humans. The change was really subtle, but it was way more than Belyaev had thought would be possible in such a short period of time. So after these initial results, Belyaev was determined to expand the scale of the research, but that was going to require the approval of his supervisors, and that was a pretty risky prospect at the time. This environment that was really hostile to science, and in particular genetics and evolutionary biology. In 1955, however, so this was after these 3 breeding generations, there were signs that the persecution of geneticists was coming to an end. And so here's another quote from that one document that I'm going to link below. But in 1957, Khrushchev gave the word to build in the heart of Siberia a new town where the natural sciences would be developed. And owing to the efforts of a mathematician, who she names there, biology was included, and the only biological institute on the list was the Institute of Cytology and Genetics. So, studying cells and genetics. And you have to remember that in 1953 was when Watson and Crick figured out the structure. They proposed their model for the structure of DNA that turned out to be correct. We had an experiment that finally conclusively, although people should have believed it a decade before, but additional research came out that showed that DNA was the hereditary material. So all this was going on. Khrushchev wanted Russia or the USSR to be sort of more respected for its science. And so he was starting to try to invest money in that. And we'll talk about Lysenko here in a minute. The Institute of Cytology and Genetics, while that's a great thing that it got put into place, it was headed by a party loyalist who had really keen ears for dissenting views. He didn't appreciate rivals, so basically people smarter than him, and wouldn't hesitate to turn people over to the KGB. Belyaev was hired at this place, so this was Akademgor, can't remember what it's called. I think it was Akademgoristok. Anyway, Belyaev was hired to open an evolutionary genetics lab at the Institute shortly after it was established. And so this was a position that provided him the opportunity to finally expand his fox domestication research. But Lysenko was still in power, even though we have this institute now that has the word genetics in it. So I'm not really sure how that happened. It was way up north. But anyway, Belyaev still had to be careful to basically hide his research under the guise of breeding foxes to improve the fur business, because that's what the government wanted. Belyaev at that time hired Lyudmila Trut to manage the experiment. He hired her in early 1958. It was based on her background in animal physiology and behavior. So he didn't have as much of a background in animal physiology and animal behavior. So together they were a pretty strong team. He was really clear with her about not only about how dangerous the research was to perform in the USSR at that time, but also the fact that it probably wasn't going to yield results for a long time. And for an academic career, a scientific career, that could be the death of you if you don't get results. However, she loved the idea of his research and she was all in. She moved to Siberia to start working on the project shortly after that in early 1958. In 1959, she traveled to a whole bunch of fox farms throughout northern Russia to pick foxes for the experiment and also to choose a large farm where they could do this, right? That already had some resources there for taking care of the foxes and that sort of thing. She found one in Lesnoy. This was a remote location near the borders of Kazakhstan and Mongolia. And one of the first things she did was oversee construction of better living conditions for the foxes. So there was dens for pregnant females that were lined with wood chips so that they could sort of mimic a little bit of what happens out in the wild. Larger cages for them to live in so that they could have relatively healthy pregnancy. In 1960, so a couple years later, she brought in a dozen foxes from the pilot project. Remember that had been going up in Kohila. So that had been going on for 8 generations. So the pilot project, they already had some relatively calm foxes. And in fact, fact, there were two that were the calmest of that group, Laska and Kisa, that even allowed Lyudmila at that time to pick them up, though they were exceptional in how calm they were. That wasn't the norm for the foxes. Starting in January of that year in 1960, that was when they started picking 10% of each generation's foxes as new parents for the next generation. It was right about that time, too, that Belyaev actually became the director. So the guy that we talked about before that would turn people over to the KGB, he was fired, I think. He pissed off somebody in government. Anyway, Belyaev became the director of the Institute of Cytology and Genetics in 1960. And so under his leadership, they started to resume the study of classical genetics. And you're probably wondering what's going on with Lysenko at this time. So let's skip forward to 1964. Lysenko finally, remember he went into power like 1927, 1928? Finally, he was losing his grip on power. He had been denounced by a bunch of scientists, including 3 well-respected Russian physicists, for being responsible for, quote, the shameful backwardness of Russian biology, and for, another quote, the defamation, arrest, and even death of many genuine scientists. And so because of this, Belyaev was finally, in 1964, able to give a presentation about the true nature of his research. He could finally talk about it in terms of genetics. He gave a presentation to the Congress of Genetics at The Hague, and he introduced his hypothesis about the selection of tameness leading to domestication, and he was able to share their early results at that time. So there's a lot more I can tell you. I've probably already talked for way too long. I basically wanted to give you the historical background because this research started at great peril to the researchers. So many scientists, geneticists especially, lost their lives, or at least their livelihoods and their reputations during this time in the USSR. So I just find that fascinating that he went to such great lengths to start this study that really has been hailed as one of the landmark studies in evolutionary biology and genetics. And so what they found is exactly what is modeled here in this game, this friendliness over a number of generations, that the foxes did develop the white spotting and the curly tails and the floppy ears and, the barking and the whining in response to humans, really developing emotional bonds with humans eventually. And so I'll write more about the actual research itself and what they've found and sort of the timeline for that. I'll write that in a blog probably within the month. So I'll put something up in the community page when that happens, and a link down below when it happens. So if you're watching this much later, it might already be up. Okay, so now on to my review of this game. I really like this game. It's not going to be a top 10 for me, but I love the theme. I've been drawn to this research for a long time. If you want to read a really good book, there's a book out there that Lyudmila Trut, or Trut, I'm not sure how to say her last name. Remember that she was lead researcher on the project and then eventually took it over. She wrote a book with Dugotkin, totally blanking on his first name now. Lee Allen Dugotkin, I think that's right. He's an animal behaviorist, really well-known, well-respected scientist. So they wrote a book called How to Tame a Fox. So I encourage you to read that if this is at all interesting to you, because it's an excellent book. It's really good. So as you've seen in this game, you are breeding the foxes. So you're basically going through 5 generations that are represented by the 5 rounds of the game. And so you start every round by choosing parents, and then you will eventually breed them to breed pups. And you can unlock the ability to breed additional pups up to a total of 3 pups that you could breed. So I finally unlocked that. And pups that you breed, this is a pretty fun part of the game, pups that you breed go into the next generation, where they can then be picked as parents. If you're playing the solo game, you're playing against an AI that will also contribute pups and steal pups that you want as parents. And so that's the basis for this research. It's basically modeling this research that was started by Dmitry Belyaev in 1952 with the pilot project, but then the larger official research started in 1958, 1959. And his research question was, is it possible that selection for behavior, instead of for morphology, like all these traits, was the process that produced dogs from wolves? That was what he was interested in. And it was conducted over 40 generations. And actually, so he died in 1985, but like I said, Lyudmila Trut took over after Belyaev died from cancer in 1985, and continued it after the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. And it continues, I believe, up till this day. Now, I was trying to find out more details on present day what they're doing, but it's very difficult because while the NIH, United States National Institutes of Health, eventually helped support this project, that actually all got cut off when Russia invaded Ukraine. So Russia has become very insular and is no longer allowing researchers access to the foxes, and NIH has been cut off from information as well. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Lyudmila Trut would be 90 years old right now. So about to turn, I think her birthday is in November, so about to turn 91. And so I'm not sure exactly what her role is now, but I do, and I'm not sure exactly how much research is going on as far as breeding the foxes, but they do still provide a lot of tissue and stuff for a lot of genetic research that is ongoing. And, all the records that they have from all these years provide lots of material for scientists to study as well. Anyway, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on right now because on the Institute for Cytology and Genetics, they have some great pictures and they make it look like the research is still going on, but they don't really give any information. So there's that. Anyway, how many times have I played this game? I've played it twice with 3 players, and that was really fun. And now I've played it solo a handful of times. Probably about 5 or 6 times solo. So I've played it 10 or fewer times, we'll say. At 3 players and at solo. I've not played it at 2 players. I think that my mom could actually play this game, except that she's about to have cataract surgery, and so her vision's not the best right now. So I have not yet introduced it to her, but I think she might actually enjoy it. So I will introduce it to her once she's all recovered from the surgery, and can update you in one of my monthly vlogs about that. So the most fun part about this game is rolling all of these beautiful dice, right? What was it on my last turn? I think I rolled like 14 of them. I mean, these are great dice, and I love the way that they are sort of symbolizing genetic changes. Now, I will say that while they were selecting for tameness, and there does have to be underlying genetic variability for the traits that were being selected, one really interesting thing that they found is that the changes in the morphological traits, like the white spotting and the curly tails and the floppy ears, these are all juvenile traits, right, that the foxes don't grow out of. And so what they found is that a lot of this is actually controlled by hormones that influence gene expression. And so these are epigenetic changes. And so that's really interesting. Anyway, that I got a little bit off on a tangent. So the dice are representing sort of the underlying genetic variability in the parents. And I think they do a really nice job at doing that, and representing the variability that you get even if the parents, say, have curly tails. You're not guaranteed to get a super curly tail in the offspring, right? And that's just the way genetics works. So the rolling dice is really fun. Choosing the parents is really fun, especially if your pups, or you can choose somebody else's really good pup, right, in the next generation. So that's really fun. Naming the pups is, of course, a lot of fun. And I think they just did a good job of capturing the essence of the research in the mechanisms of the game. So you can tell very obviously that it was probably that Elizabeth Hargrave wanted to make a game about this research. I don't know. I haven't read a designer diary for this game. I should probably seek one of those out. But it's very evident that this game wasn't just a game that existed and then got a theme slapped onto it, right? There's no separating the theme from the mechanisms, which is going to make it really much easier to explain when I finally teach it to my mom. So really fun. Thoughts that went into purchasing this game. This was a no-brainer. I had already read the book, How to Tame a Fox. I was really impressed with this research. And so when I saw that Elizabeth Hargrave had made this game, it took me a little bit to buy it because it was just a little bit more than I wanted to pay at first, although not unreasonable. I will say the price point of this is not terrible. You get these really nice wooden tokens and, these beautiful chunky dice. The cardboard components are really good. So it's definitely, I think it normally goes for, around $60. You can commonly find it for around $48 or less. And honestly, I can't remember what I paid for it, but it was on sale. And so I paid a little less than that. I finally gave in and got it. I think I just couldn't wait anymore. I knew I was going to get this game eventually. So it was really the theme that drew me in. I knew that my partner would like it because he loves rolling dice, so that was great. But yeah, I was eventually going to get it based on the theme alone. And, Elizabeth Hargrave is one of the 2 designers on the game, and so I figured it was probably going to be good. So it's been fun at both 3 players and solo. I'm going to say with a caveat for the solo game, and that is, remember I told you the first few games I messed some things up. It's a little difficult to just remember all the steps. Now, they're not difficult, they're not complicated, you're not rolling dice for the AI, which is, I think, a good thing, right? I like the streamlined way that you are making pups for the AI. I think it's good that you're making pups for the AI because they get to contribute to the diversity that you see in the parent pool, right? And eventually you're rolling more and more dice, right? So I think that's good. I think they did a good job with designing the solo AI overall. I'm going to have to play it a few more times to really know how good of an opponent the AI is score-wise, but honestly, that doesn't really matter because the fun part is just picking the parents, rolling the dice, naming the pups, and this whole idea of thinking about this experiment. And if you really think about the history behind it now, if you listen to my tangent on the history, that's just something that's really interesting to think about. What I did do and what I can probably upload to Board Game Geek, although it takes a little while, so hopefully it'll be uploaded by the time you see this. But I actually, this isn't it, this one's it. Nope, this is it. I actually made a little cheat sheet because they have a really nice one generally for the multiplayer game. They have a player aid that tells you about selection and breeding and research in the administration phase, and gaining pup rewards. So this is really good, but it does not tell you all the ins and outs of the solo AI. And so I actually made a little cheat sheet. It's very straightforward, very simple, but it just tells you, shuffle the AI deck at the start of each round. And then you can go through this little checklist to make sure you're not missing anything. And I made this after I played, I think, my first 2 or 3 games. And I was just a little frustrated because I felt like the steps are the same every round, and they're not actually, once you play a few times, they're not hard to remember. I actually don't think I looked at this during this entire solo game, but I think typing this up actually helped cement the steps in my brain. So some of the things I was forgetting was, for instance, adding the traits, right, with these friendliness tokens and checking the research. What I got wrong in the first game was actually I took the first study card for the AI off this deck, but then I forgot about that deck and started taking the study cards off of this deck, and that turns out to not be a good thing for the AI. So that's why it got such a low score in my first solo game. I haven't done that since, but it's just little things like that. So while I think it is a good solo game, just be prepared for that. As far as what do you do between turns, here's another cool thing about this game, and that is, which is something you can't see in the solo playthrough. So in the multiplayer game, you do take turns with your choices. So in the selection phase, everybody does one action where they're either choosing a female parent or a male parent or a place up here on the supply track. And, everybody takes a turn and then they do it again. So there's 3 turns everybody takes in that selection phase in turn order. And then turn order is determined up here. But after that, everybody's rolling their dice, marking their traits, naming their pups, figuring out the friendliness score, getting their tokens, doing their upgrades. That's all simultaneous. Now, they do recommend for your first game to maybe do that in player order. So we did in our first game, we did it in player order, but only for the first round. After that, we felt pretty confident about, doing everything at the same time. So there's really not any downtime because the decisions in the selection phase are very quick. And then you're doing everything simultaneously. And then there's a tiny bit of cleanup. It only lasts 5 rounds. So when we played our first game, of course, we looked up a few of the rules. It went a little longer, but I still don't feel like it was very long. But then when we played our second game, that's later that night, after 5 rounds, after 4 rounds, we're like, oh, this is the last round? Wow, that went so fast, So it really does go fast. I forget what it says it plays in, 60 minutes. 1 to 4 players, 60 minutes. I think a solo game's probably, once you get the steps down, I'm not sure you could do one in 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. And I think with 3 players, I don't even know if it took us an hour. We just were, zipping through it. So it didn't feel like it took an hour in any case. So this is a pretty quick game. I really like that. None of the downtime that you get with a lot of other games. As far as the decisions on your turn, they're not super complex. You're choosing parents, so that's interesting. Your research cards are going to provide you a guide to choosing your parents, but they don't prescribe which parents you should take, and you're going to be making decisions about what tokens you want for your player board to upgrade things. So the decisions are relatively simple, but they're still interesting. There's relatively few of them, but really the most fun part about this game is rolling the dice. So luck, yes, right? You're rolling dice, but it is mitigated by these friendly dice, right? The friendliness dice. And you can watch the playthrough and see for yourself. But other than, being a little short on curly tails, but then that was a factor of parents that I could choose from, I never felt overly constrained by that. Probably could have made it through my research a little quicker if I didn't have to rely so much on curly tails. But, when I chose my research card, I actually purposely picked curly tails because that was not one of the things that the AI was looking for. But in retrospect, maybe that was a mistake. Right? It'll take a few more games for me to figure that out. So the decisions are good. They're not overly complex. This is not an overly complex game. I would say it's not quite Gateway. It's got a little bit too much going on for Gateway. But, Gateway Plus, I don't know, family. It's definitely a family game. It's not a super strategic thinky game. Not a super strategic thinky puzzle. I wouldn't actually even call it very puzzly, but it's interesting. It's interesting. I do like it. I do enjoy it. The artwork is pretty. I will say about the artwork, though, notice that some of these foxes, there's different foxes. So you can see 4 different ones here. Is that all of them? Let me see. Which other ones do we have? Here's another one. Mistra is a different artwork. But they do repeat the artwork on the foxes. Is that take care of every one of them? Let's see, that one's already taken care of. I've got all the ones we named up across the top. I was going to take a picture of them. Oh, this is a new one. Thing. Nope, that one's the same as that one. It's just got a pink tint. Okay, so what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fox. I think they could have had a few more foxes, the repeat on there, but they're good. They're good pictures, and, and there is some variation, and they do look like real foxes. I love the artwork. I love the artwork on the board. This is really beautiful. It's mimicking Gorostok. I think I'm saying that right. This academic city that Khrushchev built up in Siberia. So you can see all that. Very cold, snowy. It definitely invokes that feeling of the 50s, right? You can see that in the patrons and how they're dressed and that sort of thing. So definitely has good visual appeal. These fox tokens, there's, I think, maybe four different ones. Let's see. What do we have? We have the little sneaky guy and the sitting down one, the looking over their shoulder one. Sitting down, looking over the shoulder, and then this one. So I think that's 4 different ones. So a little bit of variation there. They're definitely cute. Feels like balsa wood. Components are nice. The colors are very nice. All go together very, very nicely. I'm using the word nice over and over. I really like it. It's easy on the eyes, as they say. Well done. I love the flavor text on the science cards. It's really interesting. Nice flavor text there. So good visual appeal. Like I said, the art is really good. I do wish that all of the foxes were different, or at least within the males and females, right? I can't remember how many. Let's see. 18. So 18 different females. And actually, I think I just found some additional art. Yeah, this one's different. Oh, they are a little different when you look at the ones that are not the ones that go in the player decks. Are there repeats here, though? Oh, maybe not. There's one named after Lyudmila. That's pretty good. I'll have to look at that. Okay, so there's quite a bit more variation in the foxes. Oh, there's a repeat, Vera and Laika. But it seems like there's additional variation within these ones. Svetlana. That was Dmitri's wife's name, but there was another Svetlana that was involved in the research. There was one that I just saw. Where is she? Pushinka. There's a great story about her. I'll write about it in the blog. But basically, she was the first fox when they decided to do a little experiment of seeing how much their behavior would mimic domesticated dogs if they were living in a house with a person. And so Lyudmila moved into a house with Pushinka on the grounds of the Institute, and Pushinka gave birth to a litter of pups there. And anyway, it's in the book. You should definitely read the book. It's really good. Yeah, that was, let's see, I was talking about visual appeal. We've already talked about the relationship between the theme and the mechanisms. I think they did a good job. It's not super accurate, but accurate enough that it invokes the feeling of the research, I think. So I think they did a really good job there. Length, I've already talked about that. I think the length is great, especially for the multiplayer game. Player interaction is indirect via choosing parents and then also turn order. You do care about other people's pups, right? Because you can choose them. They all go into this kennel right up here where you get to choose their pups as your parents of your next generation. But other than that, you're doing your own thing, right? When you're doing the simultaneous dice rolling and breeding your pups and doing your player board, then so it's not exactly multiplayer solitaire, but it's got a bit of that. So it's not direct interaction. All the interaction is indirect. Nobody can do anything to screw you up except for take a pup that you wanted. So there's that. As far as complexity, I think I addressed that already. On BGG, it has an average weight of 2.55. For comparison, genotype, which is another sort of genetics breeding, you're breeding peas in that case game, that's a 2.76. A little bit more complex. I don't know, maybe a little bit. I think I agree with that. Mechta, a little less complex at 2.26, but they're all in that ballpark. So that's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking at as far as weight goes. Like I said, in the solo game, it can be easy to forget a step in your first few plays, but once you've done that, I think it's pretty easy. Like I said, when I filmed the playthrough, I didn't actually look at that. We talked about luck versus skill. Uniqueness, the theme is certainly unique. And rolling dice to figure out the traits of your pups, I don't think I've seen. Well, you know, genotype, you're rolling dice, but you're fulfilling, oh, it's been a little while since I played that one. You're rolling the dice to fulfill traits on cards, so not to come up with a suite of traits on new pups. So that's unique. And the naming of the pups certainly is unique. So the mechanisms, no, you know, we've seen these mechanisms before, but certainly I think making the pups with their suite of traits and doing the friendliness score and naming the pups and then having those pups be parents in the next generation, that is certainly unique, of course. The rule book, they did a great job. However, I will say, let's see if I can put this out here without erasing my pups. It's thorough. And they did a good job with the pictures and the examples and the flow of the rule book. However, I will say, for the first time you play, it can be a little overwhelming because of that. The steps are actually pretty simple and straightforward, but there's just things to remember that they remind you of in the rule book. And so it can be a little daunting on your first play. I think if you watch a video for how to play, then that's going to be a lot easier and it's all going to click a lot better. There's not too many things where I had to look up rules. And if you look at Board Game Geek, there's not a lot of people asking rules questions. And I always think that that's a really good sign. So I think they did a good job on the rule book. There is also, I need to point out, a great turn summary on the back of the rule book. And so this is basically an expanded version of the player aid. There are enough cards for each player to have their own player aid. So that's great. So good job on the rule book. I think I already mentioned the MSRP on this is around $60, but you can commonly find it for under $50. And I think, you know, that's reasonable for this game. The component quality is good. The card quality is good. It's got these nice little wooden meeples, these dry erase cards, comes with 4 of these dry erase pens. The dice are good quality, easy to see with the symbols. You know, some people have commented that the symbols seem like they don't go with the theme of the game, but I really don't know how else they would have done it. I think this was the best answer. I think they did a good job. Like I said, the component quality is good. The tactile experience is great because you're rolling all these dice. That's a lot of fun. You roll more dice at a time as the game progresses, which makes it increasingly more fun. As far as replayability, we have 6 double-sided patron cards, so 12 patrons. but they're not going to change all that much. They're pretty much all variations on a theme, but I think that's fine. Basically what these provide you with is just a way to make your player board a little bit puzzly, so that there's a little bit of puzzle to your player board. So I think that's good. They're good. There's not a lot of variability there. I think, what did I count these at? 18 different parents, but here's where the variability comes in. You start with these parents, but then the foxes that are going to be in the kennel each round, that's going to change every game because you're putting the pups that got bred into here. So, and you know, the names are always going to be different. I think that's so much fun. However, I will say there are not many different possible strategies that you can take. I think the replayability is fine for what it is. You know, I'm definitely not getting rid of it, mostly because of the theme, but it is a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm going to try and introduce this to my mom after she's done with her surgery, and I think she'll be able to play it. I don't know that this would be my first choice for a solo game, but you know, if I'm in the mood for this theme, certainly I think it could be a first choice. Anyway, so good replayability is fine for what it is. I think it's really good. So overall, I really like this game. I don't think I've actually rated it yet on Board Game Geek. What should I rate this? I'd probably rate it an 8.5. It's really good. I probably wouldn't turn down a game if I had the time. I would always love to play this game. Yeah, it's good. Good decision space. Love rolling the dice. I can't say that enough. Love naming the pups. That's a lot of fun. And yeah, so watch the playthrough. See what you think. Don't let me tell you what to think. Anyway, keep your eye out for the blog, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.